Hey gang, tonight's video is going to start out and we're going to talk about factors affecting all nations, both developed and developing. And then we're going to focus on how countries have chosen to work toward fix those problems. Well, one problem facing the world today is rapid population growth. I mentioned in last night's video that countries that are developing have really rapid population growth and that they're growing at a much faster rate than developed countries are. And so those developed countries are bringing in, and some willingly and some unwillingly, workers from other countries in order to supply them with the workers that they need. Other problems facing the world today are environmental challenges. As our population grows and we begin to industrialize and developing countries become more developed, one of the issues facing the world is lots of pollution. That's air and water pollution and even noise pollution. Along with that, as populations grow and we develop in more highly industrialized and developing countries, there's a loss of habitat for nature. That includes deforestation. Cities began to expand and take away farmland. And so that is also a negative thing affecting us and affecting the environment. Ozone is also depleted. The atmosphere, as we put more stuff into the atmosphere, the ozone gets depleted, and that can also lead to climate change. Now, here in America, for whatever reason, there's a conflict over human impact on climate change, but the way I want you to think about it is this. The Earth's size is staying the same, but as humans begin to increase the population dramatically, as we have over the last 100 years, we're going to have some sort of impact on the environment that we are in. Now, the human or the global system is a huge, can be a self-fixing system. Your ecology teacher and biology teacher, perhaps a life earth science teacher, can talk more about that. But it can fix itself. But as our population begins to rapidly grow, and we use many of the resources that we have and put bad things into the atmosphere, we are naturally going to impact the environment. Think about jamming 1,200 people or even 15 people in your house and how that would impact the house that you live in. There are also a lot of social challenges. Poverty. Developing countries, as we have talked about, tend to face more poverty or more people living poorly and not having money as the rest of the world. There are also often conditions of poor health. Developing countries also often have poor health conditions than developed countries. Illiteracy, as we talked about before, famine, people starving, either through drought or mismanagement of resources like in North Korea, are also some challenges facing the world. And we've already mentioned migration. So what are some ways that the world tries to solve and fix all of these issues that we are facing? One way that we do that is through an increasing amount of economic interdependence. Well, what does that mean? It's basically something called globalization. Goods are produced in one place in the world. The raw materials are grown in one place. They're shipped somewhere else and they're made into something else, a shirt or fabric. And then that fabric is shipped to make a shirt somewhere else. And then finally it's sold in the United States. Globalization is the growing interconnectivity of the world's economies. Now, that obviously doesn't in and of itself fix all the issues that we talked about, but it does encourage or lend itself to helping to fix those. So what causes globalization? Well, one of the causes is the desire to fix problems that we talked about. Another are advances in transportation and communication. We can instantly communicate with each other right now. I can get on my computer and I can make a phone call to someone in Bangladesh right now and I can buy something from them. That's instantaneous. 50 years ago, that would take a little bit more time than that. And today it's almost instant. I can travel to pretty much anywhere in the world within 24 or 36 hours. I can be at any given point on the planet in about 2 days. And that's a dramatic difference than what it has been in the past. So what's the result of all this? Well, boundaries change. Obviously, I mean actual political boundaries, but I also mean people moving from place to place. Political boundaries between countries mean less now than they did 100 years ago and even 50 years ago because countries begin to expand their influence, like the United States. Our economic influence is global. Products that are made in the United States or come from the United States originally are sold and recognized throughout the world. That also leads to the growth of what are known as multinational corporations. Corporations that are multinational have offices in many other countries, and that means they also get products from many other countries, raw materials. Maybe they get raw materials from one place. They produce the product in another, and then they sell it in all over the world. That has also, because of this growing economic interdependence, that has led to an increase in international trade organizations and economic unions that seek to lower trade barriers. The lowering of trade barriers encourages trade. Now, what I mean by a trade barrier is a tariff, a tax on an import. There was a time, and we hear a lot of talk about that today, of we need to raise tariffs. We get bad trade deals. It's a horrible deal. Worst deal in history. Well, that simply means that perhaps another country, China or Japan or some other country, has a tariff on a good that we sell, but we don't have a tariff on the good that they sell. And so because of that, their product is more expensive over here. Or I'm sorry, our product is more expensive when we try to sell it to them, and their people don't buy their product, and instead they buy stuff made from another country or their own country. One example of an economic union is the European Union. Another is NAFTA. We've talked about that before. The World Trade Organization is a group that encourages the lowering of trade barriers throughout the world, not just specific regions of the world, but throughout the world. There are also many international organizations meant to encourage cooperation. NATO is an example of a defensive alliance that we've talked about before. The United Nations was meant to fix all of the problems with the League of Nations. And lastly, the International Monetary Fund acts like a bank. The International Monetary Fund is a bank that provides loans to developing countries from developed countries in order to help them grow their economies. Now, there are lots of restrictions on it. There are lots of limitations on the loans, such as they have to spend it in certain ways, and they have to they often have to have a certain political structure or political system in order to get the loan. But it is a way that developed countries provide money to developing countries to help them develop. Tomorrow we're going to talk about terrorism, but today's lesson was about the challenges facing the world today and our growing economic interdependence. Bye.